The first thing that happened is, these notifications went up all over 24th Street that these very mature ficus trees were going to be cut down. And there are a lot of fears around safety. And so they just said, well, okay, let's cut them all down. And we said, wait a minute, really? And so there was a lot of public outcry from the businesses, from residents. And so there was this option to appeal this ruling.
Usually when there's some kind of notice about any tree removal in this neighborhood, it seems to bring a lot of people around. There's a lot of uproar around that. So, being within the Calle 24 Latino Cultural District, we took initiative to, start organizing. So, there was a hearing that a lot of us attended at City Hall, and that's when we met people like
Josh and Kendra and John.
Yeah, so we all filed an appeal. Different entities filed appeals.
We fully expected that there would be public outcry. We know that those trees were really iconic in the Mission. We, in fact, did a much more robust public process than we normally do. Before we put notices on the trees, we actually held a meeting with the community and, explained what was happening. And I want to note, it's not a monolithic community, because we also heard from people who were really scared of those trees. But there was a lot of distrust. There was a lot of concern or belief that we were taking the easy way out. But I do want people to know that, we're in this job because we love trees, and we come to this work with a real passion to, grow our urban forest. Street trees matter. That shade from a tree makes a big difference on the sidewalk. Not to mention, the broader climate change impacts that trees have in terms of storing carbon.
What really came through during this whole process was that this community didn't think of these as just trees. They really thought of them as family members, as neighbors.
Those trees are the spine and the center of the district. It's heart, right? And when we created the Latino Culture District, we listed those trees as part of our cultural assets, that they were important for us to preserve.
Right. The trees that line 24th Street, these ficus trees, are mature, probably 50 or 60 years old. They have huge canopies that are evergreen. So there was, it was one of the few places on 24th Street where you could find a really active ecosystem of birds and other wildlife, and we didn't have much of that on 24th Street. So
that's the challenge with trees like ficus. They look big and beautiful and healthy, and they may be robust, but they may be structurally unsound. And so it's very hard to explain to people why we have to take down a tree that looks healthy. So with that context, we did a series of community meetings, and then we actually did some walkthroughs where we answered questions. We sort of explained what the structural flaws that we saw were.
So we started to meet at the office of Calle 24. These were, the appellants plus just people in the community who wanted to help out. How do we work with DPW? How can we save as many trees as we can?
We fundraised to hire our own independent arborist to evaluate the trees along 24th Street. And we told the city that we were going to do this. And what we mutually agreed was that we would live by the results of that arborist report. Effectively, the number of trees for removal went down from the city's originally proposed 78 to 33. So it was determined that more than half the trees actually could stick.
Were viable. So that was the first step, to get that number lowered.
Also part of that negotiations was then to add additional trees into the neighborhood to make up for the trees that were being removed.
Part of the challenge that we face is we don't have a huge budget for replacement trees. And we were going above the number removal. We had committed to, doing basically 50 replacement trees. But people just felt like, it's going to take so long for those trees to, recreate the canopy that we're losing. Isn't there something we can do?
We were on a phone call with Carla Short, who is currently the acting director of Public Works. And, I said, Carla, so it costs roughly $2,000 to plant a tree, right? And she said, right. And I said, it's about 1/4 of that is to actually put the tree in the ground, and 3/4 of that is to water it for 3 years. And she said, right. And I said, so if we did the watering, you could plant 3 times as many trees, roughly. And she said, right.
And they came up with a creative idea that hadn't really occurred to us. You know, our biggest expense in planting a tree is watering it for 3 years.
And she said, well, if you come up with, she said, well, okay, well, bring me a plan. You know, bring me a plan.
And someone volunteered Kendra to make that plan. It might have been me.
Right. So we oftentimes joke that he's the ideas person and I don't know, the plan lady.
She gets it done.
Right.
But she did. She came back with this incredible plan of basically taking the 24th Street corridor, dividing it into sections, and making teams for each section. And she came up with this map, and it was color-coded. And this was so impressive. She had on the map where all the fire hydrants were. She figured out all the equipment that we need to have to get this done. We did a lot of, it was a ton of research.
And thinking through how it would actually be, you know, on the ground. How would it look for a volunteer? And so that was kind of the next step, thinking through how to create a program that would be able to...
That anyone could do.
Yeah.
And would want to do.
Sounds very doable, but 3 years is a long time to commit to something. And on this scale, my first reaction was, we can't trust that people are going to be able to do this for 3 years. It's a huge commitment. How can we ensure that they will really water the trees consistently for 3 years? And the community basically said, let us prove you wrong. The framing was, you're asking us to trust you, Buff. Now we're asking you to trust us. And so I thought, fair point, right? It goes both ways.
One of the challenges Mission Verde had is that a program like it has never existed before. And it would have really not looked good for the city if they would have planted those 150 trees and they would have gone without watering and would have died. I mean, that would have been disastrous. So it felt like, you know, the stakes were quite high. We were very committed to it. So it was just, how do we make this happen?
We had moments of challenging conversations where, you know, we pushed them and they pushed us. And I think actually, you know, a good partnership does involve making sure that we all push each other towards the best outcome.
Because one of the things the city requested was accountability. And that was the other piece. How are we going to show that we've watered every tree every week, 20 gallons? You know, and so there's a spreadsheet that we have with 150 trees on it.
Color-coded,
that when you sign up for Mission Verde, when you sign up to water, you know, you're responsible for the trees in that section. And it shows, we can go back through our entire history.
Who watered which trees on what day and at what time.
Yeah.
You can show it. And then she comes up with this beautiful presentation. We take it back to Carla. And I have to say, to Carla's credit, she said, okay.
They came up with a really impressive plan. They were organized and they built in the redundancies that we asked for to feel assured that they'd be able to be successful. The way they built this in with a whole team of people being responsible so that people can see if it didn't get done and other folks can come and kind of fill the gap was really a great strategy and a great effort.
Yeah, and it was a big lift because
Huge.
Kendra, you know, I give her a lot of credit for really, you know, taking the initiative to, you know, of course, get these trees planted, and then to be responsible to water them for 3 years. That's huge, right? But she was able to do it. She came up with a great design, so volunteers can just take care of different areas. So she created all that, and then, you know, we put the word out. You know, we put it out through our networks, our social media, our emails. You know, they had barcodes on all the trees when they first planted them, so people want to get involved. They scan the code, and that's how they connected to become a volunteer. So it was a big neighborhood effort, you know, to do this.
I've lived here a long time, and I felt that despair about, like, why are these things this way? And I started thinking about these words that a really great coach that I worked with once upon a time said. She said, sweetheart, if you want a party, you throw a party. And I just thought, okay, well, if I want clean streets, probably I need to go pick up trash and make them clean. If I want, more trees, I have to plant the trees. If I want, the trees to live, I have to water the trees. I have to be part of making the community that I love better. Some of the problems are so big, but you know what's not too big? To water 5 trees a week. That's something you can do. I think that's part of Mission Verde that's resonated with people, is that it's like, well, I might not be able to fix this enormous problem, but I can have an impact in this corner, and it's meaningful to me.
For the volunteers that are doing this, I think they're seeing their reward every week because the tree gets more and more lush. The tree's happy because we're watering it, and it just makes the neighborhood look great. Trees are wonderful.
The partnership with the ARC is one of the most rewarding pieces of our program, I think.
My name's David. I'm an instructor at the ARC, ARC San Francisco. It's a private agency. We serve adults with developmental and or physical challenges.
My name is Dan Weedman. I work for the ARC of San Francisco.
One of my primary responsibilities is to bring participants to engage them with communities. So we're helping Mission Verde water trees once a week. Calvin, what would you say about watering trees for Mission Verde? Do you enjoy doing it?
I enjoy doing it.
A couple incidences where people have come up and they've talked about their tree, and then we've been able to kind of turn it around and talk to them about the importance of what we're doing with Mission Verde. And because of that, they're like, oh, well, maybe I will volunteer with Mission Verde. And so those little interactions with the community have made it all worth it.
What we didn't anticipate was how it would create community, not just support existing community. There's so much more community that it built than just watering trees.
It was an opportunity for folks in the community to do something, and then to do something and meet your neighbors at the same time.
This is our neighborhood, and we want our neighborhood to thrive. We want the trees to thrive.
The message to the community is, it sounds very doable, but it's a lot to do something every single week for 3 years. Also, in the mission, it's a lot easier to roll a cart because it's pretty flat, right? So I would caution groups in other places. I don't think it means you can't do a program like this, but I think it may mean you're going to really need to get partners who live nearby so that they're not having to roll a cart on a very steep San Francisco street. I would always encourage them to talk to the Mission Verde team because they've done a ton of work and it hasn't been easy.
We made sure that this was done through Calle 24, which established this cultural corridor. Eric Arguello and his staff over there. If we did not have that connection, that support, it would feel really disconnected. Mm-hmm. And so that was an important piece in the development of Mission Verde from the outset. When other neighborhoods come and talk to us about this program, one of the first suggestions that I have is, who's your neighborhood association? Who are your neighborhood organizers? Get them involved from the very beginning, because it's you need that support, you need those roots in the community, and it's a 3-year commitment. It's a big commitment, and volunteers are going to come and go, and you need to have that consistency in the community. Yeah.
We're learning as we go, but it definitely gives me hope. And there's no question that there was a passionate group of advocates in the mission, but we have tree lovers everywhere in San Francisco, working towards rebuilding that trust with the community, showing other people what we can do when we work together. And with our partners in the nonprofit sector, it gives me hope that we can reach these goals of having a really healthy urban forest in San Francisco, a model urban forest in San Francisco.
So in the end, we have an additional 130 trees, who are going to be there for a lot of years, we hope, for the next generation to enjoy and to take care of in the future.
It's a wonderful legacy we're leaving.
We know that climate change is happening, and we want to be sure that we are planting trees that are not likely to have the structural flaws that the ficus have, so that we're not forced to remove them. One of the things I'm actually pretty proud of that the city has done, and it's really been through the leadership of the Urban Forestry Council, is we've actually started to look at cities that have the climate we are expected to have in 50 years and what trees are doing well in those cities. So we're always looking at what are the best species to plant so that we're really now planting for our future climate.